Hi, a couple of months ago I made a video explaining why I think the USA are wanting to destabilise Xinjiang. And today I've got some more evidence of this which I'm going to take a look at. So if you wish to know more, stay tuned. Welcome back to the Barrett channel. I'm Lee. I operate this channel with my son Ollie. We cover food, travel, technology and geopolitics. A varied mix of subjects, so there's something for everyone. Now, as I said at the beginning, I've uncovered more evidence of the USA's campaign to attack and destabilise the area of Xinjiang in northwest China. And first, I'd like you to listen to this video clip and then I'll discuss some of the points. It's a guy by the name of Lawrence B Wilkerson. He's a retired US Army colonel and also a former chief of staff. So he has held a fairly high position and I'm sure he would have access to classified intelligence documents. And this is a clip from a speech he made in 2018 while attending the Media and War Conference at the Ron Paul Institute.
We're in Afghanistan as we were in Germany post-World War II because it is the only hard power the United States has that sits proximate to the Central Base Road Initiative of China that runs across Central Asia. If we had to impact that with military power, we are in position to do so in Afghanistan. Second reason we're there is because we're cheek and jowl with the potentially most unstable nuclear stockpile on the face of the earth in Pakistan. We want to be able to leap on that stockpile and stabilize it if necessary. And the third reason we're there is because there are 20 million Uyghurs, and if the CIA has to mount an operation using those Uyghurs, as Erdogan has done in Turkey against Assad, there are 20,000 of them in Idlib in Syria right now. Well, the CIA would want to destabilize China, and that would be the best way to do it, to foment unrest and to join with those Uyghurs in pushing the Han Chinese and Beijing from internal places rather than external.
So first of all, he says that the reason the US military are in Afghanistan is not because they are fighting the Taliban or state building or even reconciling with the Taliban, and nothing to do with fighting any terrorist groups. It has everything to do with three primary strategic objectives, and one of them is being right next to the main hub of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative that runs across Central Asia. And the second is that the CIA may want to mount an operation using Uyghurs from Syria to destabilise the Xinjiang region. So for those of you who don't know, China's Belt and Road Project, also known as the 21st Century Silk Road, is an infrastructure and investment program spanning from China through the Middle East to Europe and also into Africa. China's helping more than 60 countries to build infrastructure in order to help facilitate global trade. It's a huge project, and this seems to be a problem for the US, UK and Europe. For many years, these countries have either ignored or exploited African nations. China is offering an alternative, and Western nations do not like it. Recently, the US, EU and even the UK have suggested setting up projects to compete with China's Belt and Road, which actually I find quite funny, as they can't even manage to build infrastructure for their own citizens, never mind halfway around the world. Anyway, but that's another story. In reality, these Western nations know they are not able to compete with China's Belt and Road. So they're attempting to do the only thing they know how, and that is to try and derail China's Belt and Road project. And that's why we're seeing all this rhetoric about Xinjiang almost daily in the Western news cycle, as Xinjiang is the strategic hub for the Belt and Road out of China. So how are they trying to do this? Well, their ultimate aim is to destabilise the Xinjiang region using any means they can. And this is why we're seeing so much discussion about forced labour, human rights issues and even genocide with regard to Xinjiang. We never hear the press talking about those kinds of things in other parts of the world like Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Yemen, or even the US itself with Guantanamo Bay. As also mentioned by Lawrence Wilkerson, the CIA are also prepared to use the 20,000 or so Uyghurs in Syria that will eventually return to Xinjiang to help in destabilising the region by committing acts of terror and trying to radicalise other Uyghurs in the Xinjiang area. The Chinese authorities, though, are not stupid. They are well aware that this is going on and has been going on for some time. That is the main reason that security is so tight in the Xinjiang region. Previously to this tightening of security, there were many terror attacks by separatists in the region. There has also been a huge amount of investment into Xinjiang to build the economy and provide jobs for young people. So they are much less likely to be radicalised. And it's very easy to see how the West, with their narrative of forced labour, are trying to undermine this effort. In my opinion, only China are trying to deal with terrorism at the root. And yeah, it's not a perfect solution, and there will be innocent people caught up in the net. But what's the alternative? To continually wage wars and drop bombs with all kinds of killing and injury of innocent people? Just look at Iraq, Syria, Libya, countries that are now completely destroyed, along with hundreds of thousands killed. There really is not an easy answer to dealing with terrorism. And to give you some more context, I now want to show you another video clip from a woman by the name of Sibel Edmonds. She is the founder and president of the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition. She worked for the FBI's Washington field office, and during her work at the FBI, she discovered and reported serious acts of security breaches, cover-ups and international blocking of intelligence that had national security implications. The US state has gone to great lengths to have her silenced, and this clip is from an interview she did in 2015, over 6 years ago, but in my opinion shows the US's strategy re Xinjiang even then.
Is exceptionally important in terms of this Gladio B narrative, which you've been laying out for a number of years now. And this one comes via the New York Times, January 14th, 2015. Turks are held in plot to help Uyghurs leave China. And this is talking about 10 Turkish citizens and 2 Chinese citizens that have been arrested and accused of providing altered Turkish passports to terrorist suspects from the western region of Xinjiang. A state-run newspaper reported on Wednesday. Xinjiang, that sounds familiar.
People who have been following my interviews, if they recall, even in 2004, 2005, during my interviews, whether with Peter B. Collins or a bunch of other outlets, I always talked about the importance of Xinjiang and what Turkey and U.S. like to refer to as East Turkestan, the Xinjiang region, in this plot, in this operation to organize the dissent, the ethnic minority there, Uyghurs, against the mainland China and the Chinese government, etc. So I used to talk about this a lot, and people would say, why? I mean, she's talking about Xinjiang, Turkestan. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia, man. Why can't we talk about Pakistan? They are relevant. Who cares what's happening in the place called Xinjiang? We don't even know how it's spelled. A lot of these people are taken out by the operatives, Gladio operatives, in this case, most of the times by the Turks, because Uyghurs are Turkic minorities. Their heritage, their race, their language, etc. And they are taken out, they are trained, and they are armed, and then they are sent back. And there are various areas, porous borders. I mean, even if you look at Afghanistan, especially now that we have Afghanistan as a kind of a base, you can see how easy it is to smuggle these people out. I mean, to get them out, train them, militaristically train them, and arm them. Tell them what to do in terms of the next stage of operations, then send them back from the other side, going through Central Asian Caucasus to Afghanistan, and then back to Xinjiang, where, lo and behold, some terror events takes place, and people have no idea. How did they get the guns? How were they trained militaristically? Because Xinjiang is under China's control. Well, they are trained outside. So the Chinese government's version of the story is much closer than when the New York Times takes the version of the Turkish side saying, oh, yeah, it had to do with some independent operatives trying to make some bucks. One of these guys paid $6,000 to be taken out of Xinjiang. And that's what it's all about. And Chinese government, they are telling a different story. The truth is much closer to the Chinese side than it is to what the Westerners are saying. And again, it's going to be extremely important, this region. It would be how these people are being, abused and oppressed, and they need to have their own land, and it needs to be carved out. And as we talked about before, the United States have already brought one of these figures from Xinjiang area into the United States. He lives in McLean, into the State Department, and they had a meeting where they declared him the president of East Turkestan in absentia. So as far as the Gladio US is concerned, they even have a president for Xinjiang. How could you have a president for a country, nation that doesn't exist? There's no sovereignty, it's part of mainland China, meaning that is the objective. We want another Taiwan. We want to gradually, by playing, how here internally we play the gender card and the race card, well, for that part of the world to play the minority without land, we're going to help them. They're being oppressed. The Chinese are gunning them down and torturing them. So let's take out this. We put military base there. And we also have the sympathy of the world. Now, I'm not saying Chinese are not abusing their powers with the Uyghurs. I mean, there's a lot of things for Uyghurs that they have the right. I'm not at all challenging that notion. But as the Western nations, United States, Gladio, we've never cared about people suffering. That's not within our interest area, unless it can be utilized, capitalized upon to get our objective, meaning have that area, declare it anonymous. We already have a president in place, and make sure that China, energy-wise, is not going to have an easy time to sustain a 6-7 billion population and ginormous economy.
And one last thing I would like to mention, and I may make a more comprehensive video about this sometime in the future, is that it seems very strange to me that a number of strategic areas where the Belt and Road is going have seen increasing activity by groups like ISIS. Mozambique, for instance, all the way at the bottom of Africa, nowhere near the Middle East, suffered a large ISIS attack, killing many. ISIS also claimed responsibility for an ambush in a port town there. Also, ISIS turn up in other places that are connected with the Belt and Road too. And extremism is on the rise in places like Sri Lanka, Malaysia, the Philippines. So what are ISIS doing in these countries? Who's funding them? Who is organising them? Think about it. Remember that massive explosion at the port in Beirut? Was that just a coincidence, or was someone else behind it? I know what I think. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. And as always, for now, take care.